Hello everyone, welcome to iDare presents Breakfree, a safe space to unlearn and get over habits, patterns, relationships or situations that don't serve you well or are hurting your well-being. Today we have with us Alicia Souza, who is very well known as the happiness illustrator, and we're so excited to talk to you and get to know more about you. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
How are you feeling today?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good as well. So let's start off. I would love to know a little bit more about your journey. I know you started with banking and then now you're into illustrations. How did that happen?
Okay, so I was born and brought up in the Middle East. I studied in Melbourne. I studied communication design. But after I wanted to be an illustrator when I was in uni.
Okay.
I want to talk about how the banking happened because
Yeah.
that sounds a bit out of the way considering I studied design. So what happened was when I was in school, I really didn't think I would be any sort of artsy person. The only thing I knew about art was starving artists. That's the only relation I knew.
Yeah.
I was in the Middle East, so there was no one who's an artist. Everyone just had a 9 to 5 job. So that sounded more normal, and that's just what I assumed I was going to be. Fast forward, I was closing in on finishing school. We had one art teacher when we in the later years, so 11th, 12th. And I was so sure I was going to become an accountant by 11th and 12th. And she told me in not so many words that I was going to ruin my life if I didn't take art. And this was not because I was amazing or anything, but I was the only one who really loved drawing. Like I just love, and every time she'd put up a drawing on like a bulletin board, I'd stare at it and I'd try to figure out how she did it. And that was the only, just the interest itself was what she acknowledged. And no one would, because of course no one was in the field. And that set the bar for me in terms of what I wanted to do. And the one great thing I think that my parents did was they didn't dissuade me from doing it. Because if they had even said, I don't think this is a good idea, I would have stepped away and done something else. Because actually, even though it will seem like I'm not, I was and am a little more risk averse. Anyway, so I went to Melbourne and did communication design. But when I was doing design, I realized it's not really design that I liked. I loved just drawing. So I got, it was in my last semester that I realized I loved illustration. And I made a promise to myself that I was going to do only illustration gigs when I got out of uni and not design per se. And it so happened that on my portfolio review day, I got my first illustration project from the local newspaper. It was so good. I loved that whole process from like start to finish, seeing it in print, amazing. It set me up. And from there, now to, of course, pay my bills, I realized firstly that you don't get illustration jobs full-time unless you work for a newspaper. Otherwise, it's mostly contract. So to do contract illustration, I had to get a job to pay my bills. So that's when I worked in the bank.
Okay.
So I was in the bank I was in the coffee shop before. So I was coffee shop all throughout my, you'd think I'd make good coffee, but you know, I don't know. But all through uni, and then I worked in the bank for a year and a half-ish. Yeah, and then and then side by side I was drawing and illustrating. And when I was in the latter half of that year and a half-ish was when I started working on Chumbak, and my co-founders were in Bangalore. Cutting the long story short, also my visa was at a point where I had to make a decision whether I wanted to stay in Melbourne forever or come to Bangalore. And I did again, seems like I'm not risk averse, but I came to Bangalore and started on Chumbak. And then a year and a half after working on Chumbak, we split ways, and that's when I started freelancing. And that's the story of how I actually began.
It's so interesting to see how you like thought you were gonna do like accounting and then you were like sure that illustrations and then you ended up doing both in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
You know, and you said something about like the 9 to 5 seemed very normal to
Yeah.
you, right? And I think so we work a lot with school students. We host panels for them and we interact with school students and college students a lot. And most of them have this entire notion that there is a normal like structure to people's lives, right? Which is like you do well in school, you do well in college, then you get a good job, then you start a family, and like so on and so forth. And even the streams are very like, you do the mainstream like legal or engineering, medical, whatever, right? So what do you think about this entire concept of something being normal?
Okay, so there's of course no normal. I understand the idea of structure and I understand where it came from. So we have to I don't diss parents who, and now being a parent, I completely, I see it even more, that I think everything comes from a bit of fear. Why parents say you should do engineering and doctor is because the most seemingly stable job you can get.
Right.
You finish, you're going to get a job, you'll get a good job, you'll be able to support a family, which in turn was what everyone always wanted, not so much anymore. And you live happily ever after, what people think is happily ever after. That was why parents say the things they do, and it comes from a place of goodness.
Of course.
So now there's so much more, so many more fields, so many more opportunities. You create your own as well. So there is no normal. And even when it's 9 to 5, now people realize that everyone has different ways of working. Forget work from home, even timing. Some people just work better in the evenings. I'm such an early bird, so I fit kind of in the norm. The perceived normal of
Right.
getting up early, and I still do my work considerably early and finish up early. But yeah, there's just no norm, and you can. And now we're at such a nice place where, if you are really decent at what you do, companies will take you up regardless of being hired. You can contract work, so that amazing detour from normalcy, I guess,
Yeah.
is happening, and I think it's an amazing time to be getting started into work and stuff.
Right. Thank you. Actually, I think the fact that like we can create our own normal is so empowering as a thought, right?
Yeah.
And the fact that there's so many opportunities that students or anyone who's looking to can like take hold of is great.
Yeah.
So I had my life sorted in my head at least. I always knew what I was going to do. I knew I was going to come back to India, work in the social impact space. And when I moved here, I started the app. I started working on the app, and the idea I had for the app to once we started doing the focus groups and talking to people became so different and so much better, in fact, actually. But I always found myself comparing like my app's trajectory or like my startup's trajectory to the other friends who are working in like the startup fields, right? And I think generally for startup, the gestation periods are like 2 years, 3 years, you're sorted, you've built a unicorn and you're good to go. And then I was like, why am I not like on the same path? Like, why is it taking me so much longer to like, do the focus groups and get the app out and all of those things? And I think the nature of our industry is obviously very different, and I did not ever think about that, right? For me, it was like all our normals are the same, and I think that made the comparison so much worse. So I actually wanted to check with you, like, do you ever find yourself comparing to others, like on Instagram or whatever?
Okay. So so of course the industries are completely different. I love Bangalore because you get to meet people from different fields, like
Right.
a lot of techies, a lot of people who are starting up businesses, and a lot of artists as well. So actually know way more business owners than artists and stuff. And yes, the comparison thing is happens all the time. I'm a little old now, so I don't compare. Only because now I understand my process. Of course, I can tell you the same thing of, everyone's journey is different. But not only is everyone's journey different, but everyone's business is different. How you treat your business, how you want your business to be. So, for example, a service business, say, is very different to a product business.
Of course.
Also, how much you want to put into it, how much of your personal life you want to put into it, and your time you want to put it into it. There is, of course, a smidgen of luck also involved. And when I say luck, I don't mean like, it of course involves hard work and stuff like that, but you have to also be at the right place and right time. I didn't know literally anyone in my field. So when I started off as a freelancer in India, I literally did not know anyone. And my problem was actually that I didn't know if this was even possible to be a freelance illustrator in India. I knew, I think, one person in Bombay who I didn't know personally, so there was no way I could figure out if this worked. So my thing was just to make it work. So I really never had to compare. A lot of things that I do end up being cutting things short if I realize it's not good for me, because I know they say happiness illustrator and stuff, but for me, honestly, I kind of live my life by that, where if something is not and I don't say happiness, but I say if it's not working for me in a positive light, why would I do it? So including comparisons, I do cut it short. Now, from an artist's point of view, so if there's an artist, and I get that a lot, like they compare, because I work as a commercial illustrator, but not everyone is a commercial illustrator. Some people just draw as an artist, which I'm technically not. I can't hold an art show. I mean, I can if I want, but But ideally, I just work as a commercial illustrator. So someone else doing commercial art, hosting galleries, and their journey is completely different. So you literally cannot compare. Also, how much time someone puts in. Like now, I literally cannot put as much time into work as I could pre-child, unless you're taking something positive from the comparison. So you say, oh, they did that in a certain way, which I can definitely, use and will help me. That's the only way I think people should compare. But also, I feel like we are also at an age where, and this also might be a factor of time, because when I started Instagram, there weren't those many illustrators, not many people who were doing products. So I didn't really have people, at least locally, who I could compare to.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it would have been different, say, if I was there now. But I'm a little more, I try to close things off if I know it's not helping me. But if you know something's not working for you, especially like, say, online, I know Instagram can be a bit anxiety ridden. So if you feel like it's not the only way to help yourself, and literally help yourself, because you're the only one who can stop yourself, is to set limits, put a timer on your phone, do what you have to do, because it's not going to help you in many ways. Besides it not helping you mentally, it's not going to help you anyway in your work. It's just going to make it more worrisome, which again won't help. It's like vicious circles. Yeah.
Thank you. I think what you said, like what I'm taking back definitely is like cutting things like when you know they're not good for you, right? And I think that's the entire concept behind Break Free as well. Like don't hold on to things that don't serve you well, right? And I think with social media, one thing that's really worked for me has definitely been curating my feed.
Yeah.
Because I used to compare myself to all these people and all these unrealistic, say, body standards and everything, right? And I found myself like constantly judging myself for what I was wearing, because I was like, oh, it looks that so I would probably buy a top that some Instagrammer wore, right? And I'd be like, but this looks so different on my body. And I found myself comparing like small things like these, and find myself feeling very shitty about myself, right? And then I like started following more people who had like a similar body type to mine, and unfollowing people who probably were not that great for my mental health. I think that made a huge difference.
I love that. I really do. I mean, that's a great point. I mean, most of the people on my feed is actually food recipes. I love that. But no, that's a great way to do it. Like, doesn't mean you don't like someone because you think if it doesn't help you, you don't really need to. Well, and that's beautiful.
I actually also want to go back to the point where you said, you were really like, when you came into the illustration field and stuff, you didn't really know anybody in the field. And I'm sure that must have been daunting. How did you navigate it?
It's so funny. It's such a long time back. I remember it being so hard, but it's so long time back that it almost sounds fictional now to me, because now it's the norm, right? But when I started, so I fell into it because when Shumbak and me split ways, it was very sudden. I didn't have a plan B, and I'm always a plan B person. Did not have a plan B, and I was like, oh, this is bad. and I was in Bangalore. I knew literally, when I say handful, I mean I think 5 people in Bangalore, and I had family in Goa. And when I say family in Goa, who I never lived in Goa. So I literally did not know anyone. And also, remember how I said my parents were so lovingly let me do what I want. And then I moved to India, which was not part of the plan, at least in their eyes, because I mean, they're Indian enough to want me to be abroad. And also because I was born and brought up abroad. Coming back was, I don't even think they understood what I was doing at this point. And then for that to not work out, and for me to tell them, that was really heart-wrenching. I mean, I felt really crappy to tell them all that stuff. And then to not have a plan, again, horrible. It was literally, so when I say I don't compare also, is because I literally just needed to survive. And I needed so bad to make it work, because my other option was that I had to not get back, because I never did it, I needed to do design. So that was something I promised myself out of uni, that I'm not going to do design. To the point where I'm like, I'd rather go back to the bank. That's how much of a setback that would be in like a promise to myself. So yeah, I just started taking jobs, and I just started working. The good thing was that I didn't have responsibilities beyond, say, making money to pay rent. That's it. I had a minuscule saving, which is good. So I'm really good with savings and money and stuff. Beyond that, I didn't have a child. I just had a dog, which is honestly also one reason why I stayed back. So I just had to make it work, so that I could be in Bangalore, take care of my dog, and also say that, it was not a bad idea coming here. And yeah, it was extremely daunting. And so a lot of students look now and they think it's this, it seems like it was a beautiful ride. I sit at my desk all day and I draw, and oh my God, of flowers and hearts. And it was really not that. There was a lot of drawing of hearts and flowers when it was not such a happy time, or my bank balance was crying and stuff like
Yeah.
that. But yeah, no, it is a struggle, and I think that's just part of the journey. And I feel like you can't look into it that much. You just really have to understand that there are going to be a few years. It's few months for some people, it's a few years for some people, but there is, and you have to really, really put in the work. And you have to be honest that you are putting in the work. You can't say, I did 2 hours today, what a good 2 hours. It just doesn't work like that. And I'm talking again like an illustrator, and I'm sure they're comparatives to other fields. As someone, like an illustrator, I should not be only drawing all day. I have to do my accounts. I have to do my marketing.
course.
I have to do the horrible job of telling people how much they need to pay me if they're going to get it right. That's everyone's
Yeah.
biggest worry, of course, as an illustrator, and you're usually introverted. I know it doesn't seem, again, now that I'm not introverted, but I was excessively shy when I started out. It was all physical meetings, and I hated it to the core of my being. And I just had to do it. So all these things add up. And realizing that beyond what you want to do and what you love doing, there are a lot of other factors that go into it if you want to do it as a freelancer.
Right.
And usually when I say freelancer, it's because it's not a job. You can, of course, just join a job and you got the job that you love, and that's also amazing. Knowing that it's never always hearts and roses, and isn't till now. Like, it just doesn't, it's
Right.
never as glorious as it seems on an Instagram feed.
Yeah.
Of course, it's amazing. Like, I wouldn't do anything else in the world, and it's great. But this is like, for me, 13 years. So I mean, you have to give it at least a few if you're starting out. But yeah.
Thank you. Actually, that reminded me of what you said. Really reminded me of something that a lot of insights when we do therapy. One thing I heard, like I hear our therapists say all the time, is you need to stop measuring your worth based on someone else's measuring stick, right? And when you stop doing that, you actually can see your own worth in so many ways, and you're not comparing yourself to all roses that you see on somebody's social media, right? And another thing I want to go back to was the part where you said that you need to just keep going, the resilience that you have. Like, yes, it's difficult right now, but there is light at the end of the tunnel. And I think having that in the back of your mind always and knowing your purpose will go a long, long way, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm also going to throw in, and I love that you said the measuring stick also. So, and why I threw in responsibility was because, so say someone from a job has a job and they have to pay rent, and they don't have a savings, which means the first job. I had a job before. I mean, I worked in the bank and saved money and stuff like that. So I could pay rent for a few months before something hit my
Right.
thing. But if you're just starting out, and say you have another financial responsibility, say you're supporting someone, you cannot expect someone to, like, you cannot be compared to someone who already has their rent paid. They're staying with
Definitely.
someone, or they're staying with their parents, and they're allowed to do whatever they need. You don't have to pay rent. They don't have to pay electricity bills, and they completely different journeys. Even if you're doing the same field, completely different journey. Literally cannot compare. It's just. And you have to give yourself grace in that way, because you understand that everyone coming from a different place and different skills. How long you have to acknowledge that as well. Like, some people just don't have time to put in, like, 8 hours of work of
Right.
practice and then do the extra hours of work. It's just so different for different people. But you have to also, of course, acknowledge the hard work. You have to know that you're putting in your time. I don't think that is. You can't go around that part. No matter how talented someone is or whatever, you have to put in the hard work. Yep.
Thank you. Actually, that reminded me of something that happened with me. So, I've been dealing with mental health challenges for like as long as I remember now. And I always compared myself to, like, say, other people, who were able to, like, go into work and work the 9 to 5 and be so productive the whole time. And for me, like, sometimes waking up is so difficult that I'm like, how am I going to survive the entire day and be productive and all of those things? And obviously I have learned, like, there's no way around hard work, but I think also I've learned is that, like, because all our journeys are different, being kind to ourselves is the most important thing.
Yes, of course, because if you're not going to be in a perfect state of being, or at least the optimum state of being, It's just everything else is going to be secondary in terms of
Exactly.
delivery. And you're right, that definitely comes into play. And when I say hard work, I of course mean that you have to put in the work for yourself,
Of
also your
course.
mental health, make sure you're in a good place. Of course, it's going to be hard. I feel like they're two completely different things of
Right.
pushing through hardships and just and having a complete mental breakdown. That's completely different things. It's
Yeah.
not on the same page. And I think now I love that especially young people are aware of that there is a difference when you're
Right.
starting out. There's a difference between struggling struggling with work versus struggling with, if you're struggling to get up in the morning, that's a completely different ballgame. Like, it's
Exactly.
not the same.
Yeah. I think that's just a reminder for everyone, dealing with mental health issues, that because you're dealing with it does not mean that you're not working hard,
Of
right?
course,
And
that
I
you're
think that's
working
like
hard.
something that I have to tell myself every day as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, no, yeah, that's a lot of work.
Yeah.
I know.
So, you also mentioned that, you had to like talk to your parents about it and stuff like that. What was your support system like?
Okay. So, my parents, God bless them, the fact that they let me do this, I think I was definitely really hard on myself for this, like everything falling through. And they were really seeing stars as to what am I doing, but they never, maybe once questioned and said, what is happening? but never made me feel like, everything I did was a bad idea. Never. And I think, because, so what happens if you're already hard on yourself, you really don't need anyone to
Anyone
tell you
else? Yeah.
you're saying you're doing it wrong. So in that way, I'm really, really grateful. I didn't have a support system. I'm a little hermity. I know it doesn't, now I'm not, but when I started, I was very hermity. So I'm very happy to be on my own, and I can be my own company for ages. So I was on this field, I was pretty much, with career, because no one even understood what I was doing.
Yeah.
Like, no one got it. No one thought it was even possible. And I completely understand, because even like, if someone told me, like, if I was older then and I saw myself do it and I didn't have knowledge that this could be possible, I would be like, that doesn't sound, again, risk averse. But
Right.
because I so badly needed to make it work, because I didn't have a plan B, I made it work. My support system was me. I, of course, had my sister. I'm really close to my sister. And I remember when I was starting off, but this was like when I was starting off and I had my own physical, like, you go to these fairs and stuff like that. My friend used to help me with the store, and my brother and his wife used to really come and help me set up. Still grateful. Like, I look at the pictures now and I see them
Wow.
at the store, because I used to be so excruciatingly shy. I'm like, I cannot stand near my work. This is embarrassing. So she used to stand there, and I think that was one of the things that really, because they were the only ones I knew in Bangalore.
Yeah.
For them to actually do that was really, really nice. But I feel like I'm usually very good with, and this is a very personal thing, right? Like, I'm really good with having alone times with myself and being able to mentally sort out what
Right.
I'm going through, and, like, whether I think what I'm doing is the right thing or not the right thing. So I think for me, that worked for me.
Right. I think I always thought I was that person, only to realize I don't think I'm that person anymore. So I always, throughout my life, I've also been very shy.
Aw.
And so I always, kept to myself, like, whatever I was going
Yeah.
through, like, it was all in my head, right? And I only recently realized that, like, I also didn't allow other people to be my support system
Oh.
when I was going through stuff. And I think that's true for a lot of people,
Yeah.
even the people that, come to us. I think for them it's also been like all their lives they've done it by themselves, and now finally it's
You
like,
should allow, yeah.
yeah, they're letting allow themselves to, like, get support from other people. And honestly, it was so difficult in the beginning, because I was like, I'm not used to someone doing things for me or telling me, it's okay and stuff.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, like, once I got used to it, it felt like a big weight lifted off my shoulder.
Yeah.
Being able to get support from someone outside.
Right. Yeah.
And I always felt like I can't ask for help because, I'm strong. I don't need anybody's help.
I think it's very strong to ask for help.
Yeah, exactly.
It's such an indicator of strength.
Yeah.
I know I said I'm on my own, but having good friends is a no-brainer. Like,
Right.
you just need a really good friend circle. If it's family, that also is fantastic. Yeah, you have to be vulnerable enough to share things if you need to,
Exactly.
because sometimes, so if I ask myself, but if I need to pass something through, you need to have the sort. I know all friends. Sometimes we'll have separate friends for separate things, and so having that, is. I think as you grow older, also you realize how much more, because there's some things. So when I was younger, I didn't need it as much, but now because there's so many areas of life that I have no idea about. Like say now
Right.
because I'm a mom, I'm like I don't have that previous experience. So then that's where I can go to someone who does have the experience, and someone I trust and someone I love. And yeah, that support system is definitely needed, at least for me
Yeah.
now more than ever, as opposed to me back then, because then I felt like I worked a bit better as a hermit.
I think it's so beautiful. I think like the fact that you can support yourself and have a support system with you
Yeah.
together, I think that's like the perfect combination, right?
But everyone's different, right? Like
Exactly.
I don't think everyone likes that idea of being. I think I thrive in generally, even because I work from, we have an office and I still work from home, because I think I've always been a little more, I'm
You
saying
work
hermity
better,
because
yeah.
I can't even say so because I genuinely like being in a cave kind of. But oh man, I love people too though.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, different for different people. I think recognizing that as early as possible, and also, by the way, and as I say now, also it changes all the time depending on how your life goes. Suddenly you get, say, a partner, who is, very chatty. Suddenly, how you like to communicate
Right.
changes. It changes. It's not one size fits all, and not one size fits you forever. 100%. Yeah.
Definitely. And actually want to go like focus more on the change aspect of things, right? I think everywhere we've spoken to people and the people who come to us for help, one of the biggest issues that they face is anxiety, and anxiety around change.
Right.
Because like the only constant
Oh my
in
goodness.
life is change, right?
Yes.
And there's constant anxiety around like, oh, am I going to be able to manage? What if this happens? What if that happens?
Right.
Like, what do you like? What would you say you'd like do when you're in
Wow.
that situation?
Okay. 100% change inevitable.
Yeah.
You can form a life where you don't have change, but somewhere it's going to kick you in the bum, and then even the smallest change is going to be hard to accept.
Yeah.
So it's just better to get used to something changing rather than just trying to make things change less as possible. That also is fine, but understanding that it is going to happen. It's just impossible for people
Right.
to live forever. I mean, and for the trees to never shed. It's just how it is. So there are a few things I'll tell you when, like, if I get worried. I don't journal like when I was younger, and that might be it also. When I say I was solo, I used to write a lot more. And when I say write, I literally mean like Dear Diary type writing. But now I do not. But I do, like, if there's too many things going on, I do write down all the things that are bothering me, because there's sometimes that I don't even realize something's bothering me and I forgot about it, but it's the back of my mind and I forgot that it's the back of my mind. So that helps me a lot. It's just a way that I realize helped me much later. I'm like, oh, I make lists, and I didn't even I make lists for everything, by the way, so this is not even a surprise. That helps me. So understanding what helps you. So it might be a call with a friend, might be a call with a therapist, whatever it is. But also having game plans of how it's going to stop. It's my friend was telling me about this book. I didn't get down to reading it, but she was telling me about this, how anxiety needs to be full circle and not only half. So how you're going to close these circles of anxiety. So you have to fix it for your anxiety to go, or you have to
Right.
have a game plan, or of how you're going to make this worry go away. So either a replacement, and there are a lot of things which are not, say, physical like that. Like, that's how I deal with it. Writing and closing. I really do try to come up with a solution, and it's almost like an Excel sheet. I say Excel sheet because I use Excel a lot, but it'll be worries and how I'm going to solve it on the next column. It is literally banal like that. So I don't know what could be a worry. Like, say, if my son is having sleep problems, he does not, thank God. For me, a way out would be researching it and coming up with a solution. I mean, it's very logical.
Right.
There's no, if it was something illogical, like, say, I think my hair is weird, I would try to come up with a thing of get used to hair or find a solution. I change my hair, get a haircut, whatever it is. I'm a little more logical like that, as in it's more, there's a problem and there's a solution,
Right.
kind of thing. I just found that it works the best for me here.
That's really amazing. And I think for all the problems that don't have a solution, what you said before, right? Acceptance
Yeah.
goes a really, really long way.
Absolutely. I think that's half the things, right? A lot of mental things is that, right? Like, and
Yes.
change also, understanding, like, just accepting that there's going to be change.
Change.
I of course knew my life was going to change after a child, but completely, and I knew, of course, I don't think I knew it was going to change, but I didn't realize how often it changes, because as your child grows, especially when they're younger, so every 3 months initially, it's every 3 months, it's like a different human being, of course.
Oh, wow.
It is not, oh my, and the first, wait, sorry, let me change that. For the first 3 months, it's every week, because that you count it by week. You're like, you're 1 week old, you're 2 weeks old. And realizing how that backtracks against my life was, I could not, not could not handle, I could not understand how no one's talking about this. But I also realized that everyone's expectations of it was very different. Like, say some people got 6 months maternity leave. Some people don't, it doesn't bother them at all, because they, it, it just didn't affect them, that they knew was going to happen, or they've seen a child grow up before. I've not firsthand seen a child grow up, so it was very new. And also, I work from home, so that affected me so directly. But that was a big worry, and also acceptance. So after a while, I realized, I think I was after a year, which is a long time, because for a year, it's nuts. Accepting it's just not going to be the same. And it doesn't. There's no way it's going back to the same. I think in 18 years it might, when he's kicked out of the house. But I just was like, okay, this is my life now. And it just changed. Like, then I was just like expecting changes to happen more often. And if it didn't change, it didn't change. And if it changed, it changed. Then I think, it is just accepting that things will change. Yeah.
That's really beautiful, like accepting that things will change.
Yeah.
And I think in these moments where you're having a hard time accepting, there's always help available. There's always communities, right?
Course, absolutely.
That, like, if there was like a community of mums, who could tell you that things are going to change, it would have definitely made a difference.
Yeah. Again, I'm sorry I'm talking about mums a lot, but I think that was the biggest, of course, thing that happened recently to me, which changed a lot of of course, changed my life completely. So I didn't have a community of mums. I had mums that I loved, like, so my sister and my sister-in-law, they were people that I talked to, like, especially initially, almost every day, to say, what is happening? Why is this happening? Of course, Google also was my community, which is just the mum thing. And now I have a few mum friends who have kids the same age. So it's not only about, it's people who you relate to, respect, love. I think having that, I guess you can go back to saying support system. Some people love a bigger community, so there are a lot of groups online. Whatever works for you, you have to understand whatever works for you. If you like being anonymous and you love to just type it, it works for you, it works for you. Amazing. Because at the end of the day, it's your solution. What is the solution for the problem that you're having, to make your life better, to make your life easier and happier and all that stuff. Yeah.
Thank you. I think the biggest thing I'm going to take away from today is definitely like figuring out what works for you and designing your life around it.
Yeah.
There is no normal path for anybody, right?
Yeah.
Whatever you believe is your normal and is right for you, you go for it. You find your own way. You find your own like cheerleaders on the way, and I think you'll sail through and bloom. Yes,
of course. I think you should be your own cheerleader as well, because any hard step that you take, and when I say hard step, it could be something so small, which you think is so small. It's so big. And it's so funny, because when I think about one of the hardest things that I have to do, it's literally just going and talking, like coming out of my shelf and talking to people, which is so weird because I'm talking now. And it's like at the back of my hand. Like, I love going and talking and meeting new people. But when I was starting out, that was harder than being a freelancer, because that came more easily. Drawing was not the problem. It was how do I put my work out there and how do I meet people? That was, and I think that for me was my biggest accomplishment, which is so strange, because some people are just born naturally talking.
Right.
My son, for that matter. Oh, it doesn't make sense. But not my genes. Yeah, and I think patting yourself on the back for things that were your challenges that you've overcome, and it might seem menial to someone else. You really don't need to even tell people what your challenges were and what you overcame. But being able to pat yourself and knowing very wholeheartedly that you did a great job, even taking a small step, very important.
Yes, definitely. So we started doing these sharing circles on different topics, right? Inner child, self-love, anxiety, and there basically we all come together as a group and talk about like what we're feeling and heal as a community. and I'm someone who's so shy. And when I had to do my first sharing circle, I was so nervous. But by the end of it, it was, I think, the most beautiful thing I have ever done. Like, I was crying, there were
Aw.
people crying, and it just felt like such an amazing feeling to not feel like you're alone in this journey, right? And I think where I was trying to go with this was we all have these small things that we're worried to do, but once we do it, it actually feels great. And we also need to be kind to ourselves in that moment, saying, I understand where your anxiety is coming from, but you're going to be able to do it. And even if you can't, you'll try again.
Yes.
Small steps and you'll be fine, right?
Yeah,
I think
that's
sharing
perfect.
circles now one of my most favorite things to do at work. And who would have thought?
That sounds so lovely. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we're coming to the almost the end of the podcast, and I wanted to ask you a question. So, the name of my brand is called iDare, right?
Yes.
And I actually wanted to ask you, like, what is something like you can say that, okay, I dare to. And what I mean by that is sort of, so when I started iDare, like everyone was like, oh, it's a mental health company, you all work in creating support systems and safe spaces. Why do you have a name like iDare? It should be something like heal and like something more like, warm. And my entire logic behind it was everyone thinks these journeys are so rosy and so easy, and no one tells you the reality of it. It takes a lot of courage, and there's nothing wrong with
course.
putting in that courage. And that's where I dare came in, because it's a more powerful, like, space you're coming
Right.
from.
Yeah.
So what is something like which seemed like easy for everyone, but like something that like took courage and you did it? Like, what's your idea moment?
Oh, definitely what I said was coming out of my shell and getting, I don't want to say less shy, but not antisocial, but I'd avoid it at most. And now it's literally the opposite. So yeah, that was 100% my idea moment, I guess, in my adult life.
Thank you, I love that.
Thank you. No, this is so sweet. I love recalling it because I don't on a daily basis now, so that's amazing.
And it's so important, to like recognize those wins that you
Yeah,
had sometime
absolutely.
back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much.
Like, I would never be able to say you were like a shy person. Like,
I know, even when I say this out loud, I'm like, I know it seems so much like I'm not, but I promise you, like, and I'll tell you an incident where I didn't realize how shy I was till I went for an event, and it was a wedding reception, and I saw my friend's parents, who I love, by the way, absolutely love them, and I actively hid behind my friend like a child. And I'm like, oh, your parents are there, and I'm hiding behind her. And she's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, wow, I'm a 20-something-year-old adult and hiding behind my friend. And I was like, wow, this is so shit. And that's when I was just starting. And I'm like, then there was a lot of introspection. I'm like, can I be this shy that I'm hiding from someone? I love them. Just to not say hi. And yeah, so a lot of, and then of course, then I had to do meetings also. So that was.
but I love that you came out of your comfort zone
Yeah,
to do
yeah.
that, and I think a lot of good things come out of your comfort
Oh
zone.
my goodness, yeah, a lot of good things, because these are things you would never place on yourself. Like one of the things was being called for my first talk, and I laughed and I said no, and I mailed, and I was telling my friend, I'm like, I got, can you imagine, I got called to a university to give a talk. Oh, can you imagine me talking? And he's like, why would you not say yes? And I was like, light bulb, like, oh, why wouldn't I? And of course, the next time that came up, I said yes, and then I was shitting my pants, of course. But you go and do it. I met some like the most amazing people. I made so many friends. So like again, 100% things that I would never imagine in my life. I would never put it in my kind of thing that are going to happen in my life, and also things that I would see myself doing. But once you do it, completely new world, amazing. So yeah, definitely do things that you didn't think you were gonna do.
That's so beautiful. I think it's the perfect time to like end today. And I really want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. Like, I learned so much, and also you made me so comfortable. Like, it literally felt like so easy to talk to you. So thank you so much. And I honestly think like a lot of people listening as well will take back so much. The fact that, I feel like after like this conversation, I feel like, what, I don't have to like be worried about like whether I'm doing the right thing or not. I can make sure like my life's as I want it to be.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun. I loved talking to you. Thank you.
Thank you everyone for listening, and I hope y'all go ahead and download the app to listen to the podcast. It's also going to be on Spotify. The app has some amazing features. It's like having a support system all for yourself, whether it's in the form of content or you need a friend, you can talk to us 24/7 at free of cost. When need advice, whatever you need. And we also have a lot of resources like therapists, workshops, legal help if you ever need it. And I really hope you download the app and check us out. And thank you so much for listening to the podcast again.